Ellie Drake is the CEO of Braveheart Productions. She immigrated to America 15 years ago with no English, little resources, but a big dream to make a difference. She became a doctor, a successful entrepreneur, and is now a highly sought-after international, inspirational, and transformational speaker. Welcome, Dr. Ellie Drake.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being on the show.
Absolutely.
Tell us your story. I mean, you came here just 15 years ago and you've done so much in such a little period of time.
Yeah. It counts when you're consistent. 5 years of consistency can really create some amazing results. But yes, I came to America 15 years ago, and I was born in Iran. I'm sure you know where that is, and the audience, of course, knows where that is as well. And for many years, as I was growing up, I started realizing that something wasn't quite right in the country that I was born in. I started noticing that there were so many things going on. People around me are saying things like, don't really have a dream or a goal because you're probably not going to really have all the resources or have all the choices to pursue your dreams, to accomplish them. So I started thinking at about 7, 8, 9 years old, I remember, that I wanted to become someone. I wanted to have dreams and goals. So I started dreaming about, perhaps one day coming to America. But going back a little bit further than that, I was in Iran during the bombing between Iran and Iraq, and so I've experienced many things where, the sirens would go off and you had 5 minutes to get to an underground shelter because you feared your life, basically. And so, and I actually have a funny story, funny now, but not funny then.
I can imagine.
That I had a history test. I was going to high school. I had a history test the next day and I hadn't studied at all. I had procrastinated. And I was sitting in this little yard we had in Tehran, the capital of Iran. And I remember looking at my book, thinking I haven't studied. And suddenly I looked up and I'm thinking, God, I don't want to take this test tomorrow. And as I was doing this, I noticed that something went really fast underneath the clouds. It was a rocket coming from Baghdad. And about 100 feet ahead of me, it actually split. And the end that went this way to the right, it ended up landing on the same street as my high school.
Oh, wow.
And had I been there 2 hours prior to that experience, I wouldn't be here talking with you in this beautiful moment today. But really what happened was, which is quite funny, is, I not only was I not able to take the test the next day, but we didn't have school for the entire year after that. And I was thinking,
power of intentions, right?
That's right. Now that I know about intention, but really, I've experienced so many things. And I remember one day I came home from high school and my parents were sitting at this very small kitchen table apartment we had. And they said, or at a small kitchen table in a small apartment we had, and they said, we're gonna share something with you. Sit here. And I sat with them, and they shared something with me that has forever changed my life. They said, Ellie, we have decided to immigrate to America. I remember the way I felt, I had goosebumps and it sounded so beautiful because I'd been dreaming about that sentence or perhaps that moment.
What was your perception of America at that time?
It's very interesting because I didn't really know much as far as I didn't have a clarity as far as what America is about. We didn't really have the television or an ability to know all the details, but somehow, it has infused within the consciousness, especially, in Iran as well, or at that time, that it's the land of opportunity, the synonym for paradise. You want to be someone, you're willing to get out of your own way, you can achieve those desires and goals in America. So I started, sort of fantasizing, about America. And so when they shared that with me, that was really the most beautiful thing I'd heard for so many years. And it's so difficult to come to America, especially if you, are from the Middle East. And so what happened was my father traveled to a little place called Cyprus to get a visa to bring us to America, but he was declined. They said, no, you're not getting a visa. But he came back and, my parents had made up their mind though. They were not gonna take no for an answer. So he left again a couple of months later. He went to Cyprus again, and this time he was approved. So he came back, we were so excited, he's leaving, he's going to America. We all went to the airport, we said goodbye to him, all of his family, my mom's family, my dad's family. And I usually joke and I say, yeah, we all went to the airport and we had about 250 people at the airport and about 250 camels parked outside. But no, that's a joke. And so anyway, we all said goodbye and to my dad and my brother, 8 years younger than me at the time, actually still, and and my mom were laughing and going, yes, go, we know you're going to take us so, so quickly, in a couple of months, right? And he's like, yeah, absolutely. So he left. He actually landed in Miami International Airport. He hired a lawyer. He started the process of bringing us here. But I'm sure, as many of your listeners know, it's so difficult with the immigration. And so the process was going really slow. And, the time frame that we had thought would have been probably 2 or 3 months ended up taking 18, 19 months. And nothing had happened. We missed him incredibly a lot. I mean, he missed us. I remember we would be, sending a letter. I'd be sending a letter to him. It would take him 25 days to get it. He would answer me, and then he would send it back. It'd take 25 days for me to get it. And by the time I got the response back in 50 days, I would say, forget it, I forgot about the question already.
Where was email then?
Yeah. So, but one day, my mom was on the telephone with him. And she said, you went to the embassy, you tried your luck with getting a visa, so why don't I take the kids and we go do the same thing? Now, there is no American embassy, unfortunately, in Iran, so we had to leave the country and go somewhere else. But of course, he had all these objections saying, no, it's not going to happen, it's too difficult, it's going to be in conflict with the case we already have in process. But I'm sure you've been there, and many people watching, when you have that burning desire within you, and you have that intuitive feeling that this is something you should do, then the facts don't count. And so she actually took us, my brother and me, and we went to a place called Dubai, and we had one goal in mind, and that was to get a visa. And it's so funny because the people hearing that the three of us had come to get visas to come to America would actually laugh, thinking, what are you thinking? Go back, you're not going to get visas, it's crazy. But we'd been there already, and so we actually got to the embassy about 4 o'clock in the morning, thinking we were going to be one of the first people in line, and we found that there were over 500 people in line ahead of us. And so, it was a very, very, and I'm not going to give all the details here, but it was really a very sort of trying process. And I remember when the consul finally called our name to go and get interviewed at 1 o'clock in the afternoon that day, after seeing that about 500 people, out of 500 people, only 4 or 5 people had been approved. So a lot of people had been declined and no visas. And so when we finally went there and had this interview with the consul, and my mom actually was about to get a translator to go speak because none of us spoke any English,
that's
right? But somehow I had another one of those intuitive feelings that I couldn't decline or deny, no matter how much I tried. And on the way to the booth where the consul was going to interview us, I actually said, Mom, don't get a translator. I could talk myself. And she looked at me and she said, wait a minute, you don't speak this language. You've taught yourself 25 words of English. You probably are going to mispronounce all the ones you know, and you're going to have the most important conversation of our lives. And I said, yes, you got it. And I remember she was walking toward the booth, but like shaking her head, like, what did I just do? This is the most important conversation,
crazy.
Right?
Exactly.
And I'm going to have her speaking. She doesn't speak in English. And so she was shaking her head. But, Kean,
she believed in you, obviously enough.
Well, absolutely. Or, she was just under the pressure. You wouldn't do that.
My daughter, like, no English? What are you, crazy?
But she was shaking her head. And I've learned over the last 10 years, especially as an entrepreneur, that sometimes in order for you to be able to listen to your intuition, you've got to lose your mind. So she had lost her mind, but she was listening to that intuitive insight. So we walked into the booth, and I remember I said in a very broken English, very, very, heavy accent, and I called my accent the 7-Eleven accent,
Okay.
It's a 7-Eleven accent, but I can say that because, I'm laughing with me, not at me, so it's good. So anyhow, so we went into the booth, and, he started asking me questions, not seeing a translator in the booth, and I remember he was going question after question after question, and my response to most of the questions he was asking me was, repeat, please. I had no idea what he was saying. But I remember amongst my answers, I said, I want to go to Disney World. And I remember I said something like, I want to go to American schools. And I remember vividly saying something like, I want to go to America because it's free. I meant I want to go to America because it's the land of the free. Yeah.
Yes.
And so we were very blessed because he looked up after a couple of minutes. He said, leave your passports, go and you'll have, come back, go now and come back at 6 o'clock and you'll have your visas.
Wow.
And it was such a surreal moment. I really felt like I was awake, but dreaming a dream as if I were sleeping. It was a very interesting feeling. And we walked out of that booth. We got into a cab. We went to tell the good news to my dad. And a couple of months later, we ended up coming to America. And I remember landing in America, I made a promise to myself, that consul had given me an opportunity to come to this country. And I made a promise to myself not to take the opportunities I have for granted. Landing in America, I made a decision to blossom. And it's been an amazing journey and really been able to accomplish some things, but I'll tell you, I've had some trials and tribulations as well. And if you ask,
part of the process,
absolutely, you ask any successful person or most successful and fulfilled people, they'll tell you that yes, they failed a lot. However, as long as they learned from their failures and they didn't become those failures, then everything was character building and a part of the process, as you say.
So when you first landed in America, what did you want to become? And you were in your teens, late teens.
Yeah, so my teens still, yeah. And I was going to high school. I was actually, I was supposed to go to 12th grade, but they put me in 11th grade because I didn't speak English. But then about a month before the 12th grade would have graduated, they sent me a letter saying, you're going to graduate, come to the graduation party. And I went to the principal, I was going to a school in Fort Lauderdale, saying, wait a minute, I'm in 11th grade. You put me one grade behind. And they said, no, you've been doing so good. We actually moved you up. And I said, really, I'm graduating? God bless America. So anyhow, so I really didn't know what I wanted to become. My parents had said to me, when we go to America, Ellie, you're going to become a doctor. And I had said, well, take me to America, I'll become whatever you want me to become. But I really didn't. So they kept saying, you're going to become a doctor. They made so many sacrifices. They had jobs, 2 to 3 jobs a day, minimum, wage. And so I thought, okay, becoming a doctor is good. You've got the recognition, you've got the finances, and you're able to help many people. So, okay, I'm going to become a doctor.
Ellie, the Dr. Drake, very, very shortly. And we'll be right back to hear the second half of the story, an amazing story of how she became a doctor to a successful entrepreneur. We'll be right back.
Here are the low monthly payments and interest rate as we promised. Here's where they triple. The rest of this is really just here so that we get your house when you can't pay us back.
Predatory lenders are never this easy to spot. Call us and protect yourself with the facts.
In high school, I gave all my teachers a bad time. They all gave up on me, except my English teacher.
8 years teaching English, 10 years in recovery for alcohol addiction.
When you get help, who knows just who you'll help along the way?
For drug and alcohol information and treatment referral, call 1-800-662-HELP.
There is really only one boy. One girl. One trade. One forest. One deep, dancing ocean. One mountain calling. One handful of sand through our fingers. One endless sky overhead. And one simple way to care for it all. Please visit earthshare.org and learn how the world's leading environmental groups are working together under one name, Earthshare. One environment, one simple way to care for.
Welcome back to Asia Talk. We have with us Dr. Ellie Drake, CEO of Braveheart Productions, now a highly sought-after motivational and inspirational speaker. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Now, we were just touching on how you came to America, amazing story, to become a doctor. At the time, you wanted to be a doctor.
Right.
But tell us about the cultural assimilation. What was it like being of Persian background, little English? What was it like the first few years?
It was quite character building.
Yeah,
Perhaps some of the stories are funny now, but very, very character building at the time. And I always say I didn't come here from a different country. I came here from a different world. Really, an incredible amount of culture shock. And so, you know, I had to really get to understand, you know, what it takes to be more comfortable in my own mind and my own body, you know, going to school, really handling some of the things that, you know, I hadn't seen prior to coming here. And I actually have a funny story just to tell you an example of the fact that we really had to experience some things in between, transitioning in that transitional period before we became comfortable. And I remember about 7 or 8 months after landing in America, my brother, you know, at the time about 8 years old or so, he said, you know, what do I do when people ask me, where are you from? I'm a little nervous. Are they going to accept me? Are they going to like me? And I'm thinking, okay, well, I don't know what to say to him. And I remember one day we were walking toward the pool in our apartment complex in Fort Lauderdale, and this little boy, about 7 or 8 years old himself, ran out of the pool, came, stood in front of my brother, very seriously, boldly looking at him, and he said, excuse me, where are you from? And my brother looked at him so seriously himself, and he said, Germany. And I thought, well, that's exactly it, because I looked at him, I said, excuse me, you may want to say you're from Mexico. You know, you look a little more like Jose than you do Wolfgang.
Fair enough, fair enough.
But really, you know, I can, and I speak right now, and I do seminars all over the world, and I can really spend 2 days, you know, on the character building stories, yet quite funny right now.
How did you transition from medical doctor into being an entrepreneur? Tell us that story.
Yeah, I went to school. I became a healthcare professional, $150,000 in student loan debt. I walked across the stage. I came home, and, you know, I had a feeling, because, you know, it was great to see patients, and it's great to be a doctor, and I certainly appreciate all the doctors, and I'm very grateful for everything they do for all of us. Yet that wasn't really my purpose. I felt like there was something else that was my purpose, that I could have had the passion, the desire, the butterflies for, that I wasn't really getting when it came to practicing as a healthcare professional every day. So I made a decision that I wanted to become an entrepreneur, because within me, deep down, I felt like I wanted to speak one day. And it's quite interesting because, you know, when I came to America with all the challenges in language, I sort of lost that dream. But I remember back in Iran, you know, in poetry class or once in a while, when I had the opportunity, I always wanted to speak. And, you know, when I had the microphone in my hand, in front of other children or in other opportunities, I remember I was a little nervous, but I had incredible butterflies that I actually liked the feeling. It was like an emotional vitality or a rush I would be feeling.
Where did you get that from besides poetry? Who inspired you to, you know, who's been your main source of inspiration?
Interestingly enough, I really did not have a source of inspiration when it came to speaking. I really didn't. No one in my family. I really feel like it's sort of a talent or a deliberate purpose that I am meant to carry out, you know, as I live this life. And so it wasn't really, I didn't have a mentor to begin with, but I would say that inner compass was really my mentor when it came to the speaking or the dynamic of speaking. So I go home, I give my you know, doctor's degree to my parents. I let them know that I love them unconditionally and thank you so much for bringing me to America. Yet I've decided to be an entrepreneur instead and not practice. And I said, well, you know what? I've learned that people that are around you want to protect you because, you know, they want to protect you, they love you. However, they are not within you, and you've got one life to live, and if you live it correctly, once is quite enough. And so I thought, okay, you know what, I'm going to be true to what it is I feel, and I'm going to become an entrepreneur. And I remember, you know, I went, you know, striving to become successful as an entrepreneur, and I remember my first $5,000 per month check that I received, or $5,000 check that I received for 1 month. I brought it home and I showed it to my parents and I said, look, I made $5 grand this month, see? I'm successful. And they looked at that and they said, Ellie, come on, we thought you were smart. We were proud of you. $5,000, your secretary could be making more money than that. So they weren't, you know, they weren't quite giving me that unconditional acceptance at that point. However, I came back and I showed them, I remember, about a $10,000 check 1 month. And they said, Ellie, $10,000 a month, you know, $10,000 for a month, it's not bad. You can, you know, it's okay. Yet you're a doctor. I mean, we thought you were smart. And I remember, you know, I kept being consistent, and with consistency and time, with a passion, a desire, a sense of enthusiasm, a sense of purpose, magic can happen, miracles will happen. And so I remember I made $20,000 one month, and then 30, and then 40, and I remember coming home when they started seeing those numbers. And one time when they started seeing, like, they saw this big number one month, they said something like, "Oh, Ellie, we are so proud of you. You're so smart." My father said, "You must have gotten your brains from me. It's genetic." And my mom said, "Are you kidding? If she'd gotten her brains from you, she would have been practicing right now." So that was a lesson, you know, don't let other people, even though they love you, go for what it is you love, because, you know, it's your life and it's your purpose. And when you come from that burning desire and that willingness to really go toward that, then you'll become successful. You can't help but become successful.
How could you share with us how you found your true inner purpose? Because that's, most of us are lost. You know, they're working a 9-to-5 job. The ability to know thyself is such a key skill that unfortunately really isn't taught. You know, we have to become a doctor, lawyer, consultant, or whatever. But, you know, how did you gradually find your purpose?
You know, it's so interesting because people talk about what's my purpose. And it's not like you can get up one morning and wait until that morning when it falls into your lap. Or people usually say, well, you know, I like that and I feel like I will enjoy doing that. However, you know, we look for guarantees as human beings. We seek that clarity before commitment has been made. And see, clarity doesn't come before commitment. You've got to make a commitment to what it is you feel you love to do, you love to be, who you are, how you like to contribute right now. Make a commitment. You close the back doors, you go forward, and then when you have made that genuine commitment and you are going forward, and perhaps you have, you know, been tested universally a couple of times, and you allow yourself to be bigger than the circumstances, more significant, and you keep going forward, then that's when that clarity comes. So rather than waiting to see what it is that I'm meant to do for the rest of my life, what it is that I will enjoy to do right now, that's the question I should be asking. Okay, and then commit to that and go forward, and that level of clarity will come, and then one day you'll know, you know what, that's awesome, that's what I wanted to do for the rest of, you know, for forever. I perhaps didn't know it on this conscious level, and that's exactly what I want to do for the rest of my life.
So it's a process, but you have to have the belief and the certainty that one day you'll know.
Yes.
Absolutely, fantastic. You have this saying which I've heard a number of times, but I'm gradually getting it. It's easier done than said, as opposed to what most people say, easier said than done.
Absolutely.
Tell us about that phrase. What does that mean to you?
I love that phrase because I feel like, you know, from the time I was, you know, very young, that's a phrase, that's really the dynamic or a principle I have really implemented without knowing so in my life. And to me, you know, when I would hear, oh, you know, it's too difficult, you can't do that, or that's too much money, or you may not become successful, or you can't go there. When I would hear things like that, intuitively, I would just have a feeling that if I were to translate that feeling, it would be like, no, that's easy, I can do that. That's easy. And I would always feel, no, that's easy, I can do it. And even at one point in my life, about, you know, 17 or 18 years old, I remember one time thinking, am I crazy that I always feel like it's easy, I can do that? But now I know that that's also a part of my purpose. Really, as a speaker right now, I am privileged and blessed and honored to have so many people coming to my seminars on a weekly basis. And so I can teach them the concept of it's easier done than said. The first time I said that, somebody screamed from my audience, no, you're making a mistake because you're an immigrant. I said, no, I'm not. It's easier done than said. And they said, why? I said, because the burden of wasted potential is indeed the biggest burden of all. It's easier done than said. If you are thinking about a life of service, if you are thinking about change, if you're thinking about receiving, about abundance, about contributing, rather than doing or taking the steps that it's required to do in order for you to accomplish that, that's a heavier load on your shoulder. You are working harder than me, and what I'm doing is I'm just saying, you know what, one step at a time. One step at a time. Close my eyes, have trust, and just step into it. Just do it.
And now you've moved on to Braveheart Productions, but in the process, it's become kind of like a family affair. Tell us how did that all begin?
Yeah, absolutely. Braveheart Productions is our company, and we are, you know, our purpose is to really bring empowerment, inspiration, and ease into the lives of people who are willing to open up their heart and mind to hear our story. And I'm the CEO, but really all I do in Braveheart Productions, the CEO is just a title, because all I do is I just speak. I'm just allowed to put my creativity, you know, on paper, write books, and do audios and speak. My husband, Dr. Charlie, is, you know, the person who runs everything.
Tell us how you met your husband, Dr. Charlie.
Sure, absolutely. I was actually speaking at a seminar one time, and we had an audience, a small audience. It's about 10 years ago. A very small audience of about 60 people or so. And what I was doing at the beginning of this event is I was asking people questions, what I would call the dream building session. And so what I would do is I would say, who has dreams? Who has goals? And people would raise their hands and say things like, I want to buy a new house, a car, I want to travel, be a missionary. And so this gentleman sitting on the second row raised his hand, and I hadn't seen him there before. He was new. And I thought, oh, look, he's participating, you know, he's eager. That's good for him. And I said, yes, sir, and what's your dream? And he looked at me so boldly with a New York accent, and he said, to marry you.
To marry you?
To marry you.
No way. That's pretty bold.
Yes, very bold. You know, at the time, and I'm finding it very cute right now, but years ago when I first heard that, I thought, wait a minute, you know, he just like, my whole speech was messed up, you know, I was upset. And I'm thinking, forget about arranged marriages.
In America.
You know, but, you know, they're crazy here in America. You know, don't ask me like that. But I have to tell you, this guy was so consistent. And, you know, he would ask me that every time he was sitting in that audience. And after a while, we became friends, but still not friends, not, you know, dating or anything like that. But, you know, he was so consistent for a couple of years. And he said,
a couple of years,
yes,
and that's consistent. So you figured out he's not a stalker, he's a nice guy, he's actually quite bright.
Yes, very brilliant. And after a couple of years, I started seeing really who he was, and you know, giving myself permission to connect with him on a different level. And I thought he was just a marvelous human being, and I made a decision to say yes to that question he'd been asking me for so long.
Fantastic.
And it was the best decision of my life.
Yeah, there you go. And you have a child now, a son?
Yes, I have a 4.5-year-old son. His name is Aiden, and he, you know, being raised in a family with the foundation of, you know, inspiration and motivation. It's amazing to see how that can affect children. You know, I can be on a conference call, you know, speaking for 400 people at 9 o'clock at night, and he's under my desk on his Spider-Man pillow with his blanket, and he likes me to rock him to sleep so my foot can be on his hip.
Oh, yeah.
I can be on the phone talking, and you know, when you have a purpose and you're inspired, or you are inspiration in action, then everything in your life, all trials, tribulations, all blessings, they become a part of that purpose as well. So it becomes one dynamic that's not separate, but one whole dynamic. And so it's beautiful. My son wants toys, and so I say to him, why do you want all these toys? And he looks at me with a level of confidence, and he says, because I deserve them.
You've told them how to receive, haven't you?
Yeah, but it's also important really to teach children about giving also. Last weekend we took him to New Orleans, and he gave toys to 1,000 kids in New Orleans. So it's really important to have that balance.
Thank you for sharing this amazing story. Will you come back to New York City and do another interview?
Absolutely.
We're looking forward to that. Where can we find out more about your speaking engagements?
Sure. You can go to www.elliedrake.com. I'll spell that. www.ellie, D like David, RAKE.com. And we have a community, we have you know, many resources, we have conference calls, and so many things people can tap into, and also my seminars for 2007 are there.
Fantastic. Thanks for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And that's all we have for Asia Talk. Take care, and we'll see you next time.